The bigger an object is, the more gravitational force it has on other objects. So eating more would make this master of gravity stronger.
Hello, I'm Sensei the Dark Master, and welcome back to the Lore of Ninjago! In this installment of the Lore of Ninjago, we shall be continuing our coverage of the many elemental powers of Ninjago. This time we shall be discussing the floaty element of gravity. We shall discuss this element's history, those people, creatures, and objects that have wielded this element, those abilities granted upon a user by this element, the colors, symbols, and other things associated with the element, and much, much more. The history of gravity begins like that of most other elements with the first Spinjitzu master who would teach the elemental power to an individual who would become known as the first elemental master of gravity. This individual would then pass their power on to his or her child, who would then do the same to their child for over 100 generations. It would eventually come to an unnamed man who was the former elemental master of gravity, who would participate alongside Sensei Wu, Sensei Garmadon, and the other elemental masters in the First Serpentine War, where he fought against the 5 Serpentine tribes led by the mighty Anacondri. This former elemental master of gravity was almost consumed by the great Anacondri serpent, and in general, thanks to a combination of the Anacondri's might and the scheming of Chen, they were losing until one day Wu came across some magical flute that allowed them to defeat the Serpentine army, imprison them in tombs, and then banish the Anacondri generals to the Cursed Realm. After this event, the former elemental master of gravity would then have to face the 2 elemental masters of time, Crux and Acronix, also known as the Time Twins, or the Hands of Time, which have been a subject of a previous video, so check that out. These two try to take over Ninjago after having been corrupted by the lies of Chen, and so fought against the Elemental Master of Gravity and the other Elemental Masters, and were initially victorious due to their very OP elemental powers, before being defeated and banished through time by Sensei Wu and Garmadon, who stripped them of their powers. After this, at some point, the former elemental master of gravity would pass the power on to his son, Gravis, who, at some point in the period of time before the series started, unlocked his true potential and thus became the current elemental master of gravity. He was one of many who were invited to the Tournament of Elements held by none other than Master Chen. He, alongside the ninja and other elemental masters, were taken from the Ninjago City docks to Chen's Island via a ferry manned by Chen's servant, Klaus. While on the ferry, he meditated for a bit and his powers were shown off as he floated some small objects. During the first round of the tournament, which saw the various elemental masters fighting over Jade Blade so they weren't themselves eliminated, Gravis used his power of gravity to take the Jade Blade Cole had taken himself from Mr. Pale and took it to Klaus so that he survived the first round. During the second round, he fought directly against Griffin Turner, the Elemental Master of Speed, which is an element that I've already made an entire video of, so check that out if you're interested. While initially he was at an advantage due to his ability to float, he ended up getting defeated by the speedster's quick thinking and was thrown down a hole thanks to a heavy sandbag and thus stripped of his powers by the evil Chen, who intended to use them to turn his cult into an army of mighty, invincible Anacondri warriors. He would then be sent to work as a slave in the noodle factory. However, thanks to the combined efforts of the ninja, they were able to destroy Chen's staff, which released the elements and restored them to their former owners. Gravis would use the element of gravity to help round up the remaining cult, but Chen escaped and used his own daughter to complete his dastardly spell, which turned his numerous cult members into Anacondri warriors. Outnumbered and overpowered, the Anacondri cultists overpowered the elemental masters and left them stranded on the island while they escaped to do their evil. However, Zane then arrived, and under his advice, Gravis overcame his fear and summoned the elemental gravity dragon, which allowed him to escape alongside the others. And he fought against the Anaconda cults in the corridors of Elders during the Second Serpentine War, holding them back long enough for Garmadon to make the ultimate sacrifice and banish the cult into the Cursed Realm at the cost of his own freedom. After victory, Gravis promised to help the ninja in the case of any future threats to Ninjago that occurred. Sadly, this didn't really amount to much, as during the events of Skybound, when Nadakon the Jinn sought to take over Ninjago, he was tricked into getting absorbed into his Jinn blade, though this was luckily undone by Jay's final wish. Gravis and the elemental power of gravity would then be mentioned again for the last time in Ninjago Decoded during attempts by the ninja to save Zane from a coma. Sadly, this would be the last mention of him, as it is unknown where he was during the events of Hunted, seemingly disappearing or not helping Lloyd's resistance against his evil father. Sadly, somewhat of a sad ending to an otherwise decent element. Now that we've covered this element's history, let us discuss the people who have wielded this power. First, of course, there was the first Spinjitzu master himself. Then there was the first elemental master of gravity. Then there was the man known as the former elemental master of gravity. And most recently, his direct lineage, there is his son, Gravis, the current elemental master of gravity. Less well known is that Skylar could also wield the element of gravity thanks to her own elemental power of amber, which was covered in a previous Ninjago lore video, and I suggest you check that out, as she could tap into the power as well as that of all the other elements using amber. Master Chen and Kai would also briefly wield the power of gravity via the Staff of the Elements. Nadakon could also technically wield the power through the Jin Blade, though he never really did so in the season. In terms of animals, only one has wielded the elemental power of gravity, that being the elemental gravity dragon, which is noteworthy for its golden coloration with black head, and it could supposedly breathe gravity, whatever that means. Two objects have also wielded the power of gravity. First is the Staff of Elements, which was constructed out of two substances, blue crystal and chrono steel, which on their own could each absorb one element, but when combined, they were able to absorb multiple elements. The second object is the Jin Blade, which could tap into the element of gravity or really any other element should it absorb the soul of the elemental master of gravity or any other elemental master. Now that we've covered those creatures, people, and objects that have wielded the power of gravity, let us talk about the powers themselves that it grants upon a user. First, there is gravikinesis, also called gyrokinesis, with which the user can manipulate, create, control, increase, decrease, and negate the gravitational field of selected people and objects. With this, they can make the gravitational field rather heavy, and also for some very skilled users to use gravity to create a durable barrier to either reflect opponents' attacks or pull the opponents to them with very little effort. With levitation, a user can move their own gravitational field, allowing themselves to float freely through the air. They create gravity fields to propel themselves in such a manner. With wall crawling, the user can redirect a gravitational field to enable people and objects to stick to walls or ceilings. With gyro telekinesis, the user can move objects and control anything he or she wants by gravity. The user can also influence, manipulate, or move objects and other people from great distances, usually to attack or defend against an adversary. Via gyrokinetic flight, a user can cause a target's gravity field to disappear, cause them to float beyond their ability. Via dragon creation, a user can summon the elemental gravity dragon. In terms of colors, the element of gravity is usually associated with maroon and to a lesser extent red. The symbol of gravity is this really neat looking 8-pointed star, also kind of looking like a throwing ninja star, which could potentially meant to be representative of the ability of gravity to move in any direction it wants. And it kind of looks like that other symbol from that other game, if you've heard about it. In terms of weaknesses, gravity requires a great deal of concentration to be used, and if the person is distracted, it's not as effective as other elements in this series, such as Earth. So, in conclusion, what can we learn from the elemental power of gravity? Well, we learned that in order to achieve one's goals in life, we must concentrate and not let our laurels be rested upon, lest we fail in our life goals. I am Sensei the Dark Master, and join me next time on the Lore of Ninjago. Subscribe if you like the video, and have a really nice day.